My wife was supposed to pass away that day. No, wait. If I've learned anything from this whole ordeal, it's that some jerk on the internet will take anything I write in the worst possible light. When I say should, I don't mean that I wish her dead. I mean that it's wonderful that she's gone. But to be completely honest, my life would probably be a lot easier if she were dead. That's another thing I've learned. If people are going to quote you, taking you out of context and twisting your words, it's better to just say what you mean. So yeah, the fact that she survived the shooting means I got a lot of shit I shouldn't have gotten. The shooting itself should have just been a failure. Or I guess it shouldn't have been. Every shooting incident, big or small, should motivate our officials to do something useful. But in terms of the mental institution we live in these days, that should just came through. I'm not going to name the shooter. Screw that guy. His name should have died with him. We'd all be better off if we didn't give nut jobs like this the press they want. Of course, our society and our media, be it mainstream, civic, or social media, won't do that on any important level. Patience is useless here. Likewise, I'm not going to say why he did it. He could have been an incel, a white supremacist, a religious extremist, a psycho, or a jilted lover. It doesn't matter. Regardless of what kind of asshole he was, 6 people died and 9 ended up in the hospital. A 2-year-old child would never recognize his mother. A father had to watch his son die. A couple dozen people, probably more, would have nightmares for the rest of their lives. No, to hell with his plans. Whatever idiotic reason caused him to go on a shooting spree in a restaurant was the only thing that affected the lives of the people left there. People like me and my wife. But like I said, nothing so remarkable had to happen for the shooting to become anything more than a blip in today's culture of sound bites and scrolling fates. People searched and eventually found something to bring this particular incident to public attention. But there was no obvious hook on which the stalkers and vultures of talking heads could hang their hats. The culture warriors found no support from either the left or the right. The death toll was not in the single digits, so there wasn't the horrific statistical burden that would have provided easy ratings. Why? Because someone found a personal angle, and that angle turned out to be the destruction of my marriage and everything that led up to it. On the day of filming, I was stuck on an endless Scrum stand-up, a sort of daily check-in on software development projects. A stand-up should take no more than 15 minutes. This one lasted for the second hour while the project manager, product manager, and development director argued about silly and trivial things. Ray, one of my buddies, was looking at his phone. Heck, half of us spent that time surreptitiously scrolling through social media feeds or watching videos with the sound off. But Ray didn't even bother with that disguise. He simply placed his phone on the surface of his desk, switched between apps, and laughed at articles. Or rather, he was laughing until he elbowed me in the ribs. "Bill!" he hissed. "Bill!" Pulling away from the teaser trailer for Bloodstomp 4. "The stomping," I whispered. "What?" "There's been a shooting downtown." I shrugged, holding my palms up. "So?" He flashed the screen at me. "Is it Tracy?" On his Twitter, I refused to call him X. There was a video of a woman and a man standing in a police cordon, clutching each other in an embrace. The man, a large, muscular guy who seemed vaguely familiar to me, and the blonde-haired woman. Suddenly, however, she tensed up and pushed him away. Staggering, the woman looked around with a confused and awkward expression on her face, but I had no doubt my wife of 4 years was cheating on me. It may not have come down to a kiss, but that was all I could prove. But her body language and his spoke volumes that something more had happened. The video, just a short clip, repeated from the beginning. This time, I saw the backdrop where the kiss had taken place, a storefront in a mall, with the windows smashed out. Police officers were going in and out, passers-by were looking away with hunted eyes, and my wife was kissing her lover. "Send me the link." Poking his finger at the screen, Ray muttered, "Shit, sorry." I nodded at him and stood up. All eyes turned to me. In some of them, I saw what I would often see in the future, the pity that people, especially men, felt for a cuckold. The chief stopped their bickering, but I didn't care. I simply muttered, "It's urgent, I must go." Even as the door closed, I could hear quiet voices saying words like wife, affair, and poor bastard. I didn't know the exact location of the mall, but it was easy enough for me to find all the information I needed when I left the office, walked to the elevator, and pulled into the parking lot. Tracy hadn't called, and neither had the police. I doubted they would call since she didn't seem to be hurt. I got the details on the radio, at least as much as the local public broadcasting affiliate was able to report. I was angry at what the video showed, but that wasn't the reason I was shaking like a leaf as I drove. God, my wife almost died. I was angry, yeah? Hell, I felt like my marriage was going downhill. But I still loved Tracy. I loved her for 6 years, even if it turned out she'd cheated on me. Really had fun with a guy, not just because of that kiss. I couldn't imagine hating her enough to wish her dead. The GPS unit on my phone was leading me toward the mall, but once I was a mile away, I didn't need it anymore. There were enough police cars, news vans, helicopters overhead, and curious onlookers not to miss the place. Parking a few blocks away, I made my way through the crowd to the barricade. A policeman standing in the parking lot yelled at me to move farther away, but I replied that my wife was inside. I saw Tracy sitting on the bumper of the ambulance with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She was staring off into the distance with her fingers around a paper cup. After I shouted her name over the cop's shoulder for the 10th time, she finally looked at me. My wife got up and ran to me, throwing the blanket and cup to the ground, then swung over the barricade and threw herself into my arms. The policeman, who was probably 5 seconds away from using a taser on me, reluctantly turned his attention elsewhere. I didn't care. My wife clung to me like a baby and sobbed incoherently. That's when I noticed the asshole. He was talking to the cops, but when Tracy rushed toward me, he followed her until it was clear where she was going. Or rather, who she was headed to. The bastard looked like he belonged in a goddamn superhero movie or on the cover of a magazine. One of Marvel's Chris in the flesh. He slowed his step and then stopped when I stared at him. He grinned back, then grinned happily, then changed his expression to a wide grin and walked back toward the cops. I was afraid it wouldn't be the last time I saw him, but that's what a crisis is. A few minutes later, Tracy and I were approached by a paramedic who apparently realized he'd mistaken his patient. "Ma'am?" He tried to get her attention, but she clung tighter to me. Ma'am, I need to take you to the hospital." Tracy screamed, "No!" It was the first intelligible word I'd heard from her since arriving. The confused EMT looked at me pleadingly. "Sir, this is the protocol. I have to take her to the hospital." Tracy hugged me so tight it hurt and shook her head at my chest. I asked, "Is she hurt?" "Not as far as I can tell, but..." She growled, I'm fine. "Ma'am, we need to observe you. You're in shock and..." "Holy shit, asshole, I almost died." "Yes, ma'am, and I'm sorry, but..." My wife raised her blue eyes, bloodshot and rimmed with red, to me and pleaded, "Please, Bill, please. I just want to go home. I need to be with you. Please, Bill, please." "Sir?" I stopped him. "Look, I realize you're doing your job, but she's obviously traumatized. Do you really want to make it worse?" "No, but..." "Tell me what to watch for. That's all they'll do at the hospital, right? Leave her under observation?" He realized he couldn't win this argument. Should he have sided with him? Maybe, but Tracy looked so scared and vulnerable, and I couldn't see that sending her off with a stranger would improve the situation. The paramedic looked at the two of us and gave up. He had some forms to sign, and he briefly told me what to watch out for. The police had already questioned her, and after getting my contact info, the two of us were able to leave. We had to squeeze past a camera crew from a local TV station with an angry, no comment, but eventually we made it back to the car. I helped her get in, then got in myself and directed us toward our house. Our house. Even then I wondered how long this was going to go on. In the car, we didn't talk. She just stared out the window at the horizons passing by. When we hit a pothole with a loud thud, she jumped up and screamed. When I got home, I carried her into the house and put her under a warm shower. She wasn't seriously injured, but she had a few abrasions and a couple of small cuts. The paramedic treated them, but her clothes were dirty and I wanted to eliminate the possibility of infection. Besides, she needed comfort. A warm bath might be better, but I didn't want to risk her falling asleep in it. As I helped Tracy undress, her matching bra and panties set off a new batch of alarm bells in my head. Unless she was going to do something or someone special, she always took whatever was in her underwear drawer. Maybe the combination was coincidental, but I doubted it. I frowned, but refrained from commenting. Adding another piece of evidence to the pile didn't change the fact that she was too numb from shock to have a coherent conversation about where, why, and with whom she'd been. But that doesn't mean I didn't reflect on it. I did everything the doctor recommended, keeping her away from the news and the phone, talking to her softly and gently to make her as comfortable as possible. But the thought kept running through my head. She's cheating on you. Why the hell are you doing this for her? The answering voice shamed me with a simple answer. She was a human being in pain. Yes, she was also my wife, but I wouldn't treat a random stranger like that, much less a loved one. I may or may not have lost my wife to another man, but I wasn't about to lose my humanity either. I slept restlessly beside her that night. Even if it hadn't been for the video and its aftermath, I wouldn't have been able to sleep well. Tracy had woken up screaming more than once, and I'd had to cradle her, rock her, and say words of love that I wasn't sure of anymore. She almost certainly lied to me. I could have done the same. In both cases, however, the lie benefited her. In between nightly screams, I researched the divorce laws in our state. I didn't want to rush into it, but I wanted to be prepared. We had no children. We were renting an apartment. We had only been married 4 years. Our finances had never been in perfect order. The divorce could have gone as quickly and easily as we wanted it to. If only we had the ability to choose, that is, to choose, without the world watching us like a pack of jackals sneaking up on someone to devour. The text messages were my first warning that not everything would go smoothly. Ray was far from the only person who saw the video and shared it with me. The messages started coming in before I even got to the crime scene barricade and didn't stop until I turned my phone off on the way home. With everything else going on, I forgot to turn it on until the next morning, when I found literally hundreds of messages on it. And not just text messages. On Facebook Messenger, Twitter, Discord, Slack, Teams, literally every communication channel that allows one person to send a message to another, there were copies of that damn video waiting for me. I relived one of the worst moments of my life over and over again as concerned people from my past contacted me to let me know that my wife was probably having fun with another guy. Most of the messages were of the hang in there bro type. A few messages were of the I'll help you take this bitch out to the desert type. These guys, and they were all guys, were blocked. Some, especially from her family and friends, begged me not to jump to conclusions. Among them, I learned everything I wanted to know about Chad Wilkerson, the man who had been caught on video kissing my wife. I hated Chad. Chad had a good reason for being a big, pot-bellied, smug son of a bitch. He'd been a halfback in high school and college and then briefly played soccer. He'd also dated Tracy for about 5 minutes in high school. They weren't together long enough for him to entertain her, so claimed the many emails that came to me, but they were moving in that direction until they drifted apart at different colleges. My wife's ex-boyfriend owned his own business. He was not, however, an autocrat. His family, unlike mine, consisted of wealthy people. But by all accounts, he was a decent boss. I learned this from one of his employees who did a little digging on the internet. He figured me out by going to Chad's Facebook page, where he saw that Chad had added Tracy as a friend, and then saw that Tracy was married to me. The fact that a random guy was able to figure me out so easily hinted that a real shitstorm was about to rain down on my head. When Tracy woke up around 9, there was new footage, including raw footage of the shooting itself, recorded by the restaurant's security camera. I didn't want to see her. Now, I'll never see her. I won't describe it. I'll just say that Tracy almost died, and Chad saved her. Saved them all. He grabbed the shooter, took the gun away from him, and beat him to death. Even I couldn't deny his bravery. My wife walked around the house like a zombie. I called to make an appointment for her to see a counselor, but even given the urgency of her need, the appointment was a week away. We still needed to talk, but I knew nothing useful would come of it in her current state of mind. Tracy was getting calls from people, friends, family, a few reporters. They were calling her phone, her cell phone, my cell phone, her home office number. I thought wistfully of the time when the worst I heard when I said hello was an attempt to sell me a car warranty. I was doing my best to get her to calm down and stay away from the internet and TV, but it was only a matter of time before she saw something. I answered the phone and the occasional knock on the door, but that meant I couldn't keep an eye on her. Eventually, she opened a web browser to try and catch up on her reading. 15 minutes later, I found her sitting at her desk sobbing, while the screen played the video of the kiss over and over again. Just the passionate part, not her pushing away from him, as well as details about the two of them posted on the local Facebook community page she belonged to. "I'm sorry," She didn't even look at me. Tracy, we can talk about this later. No, I need to. She turned around in her office chair to face me. I didn't cheat on you. I promise, I promise, I promise. Tracy, I know it looks bad, but I didn't cheat. I. We. She wiped her eyes, then closed them, trying to regain her composure. It's true that I dated him for a while in high school. I wasn't in love with him. It was just love. We knew we had no future when we got together. It was just fun. I sighed and sat down in the vacant chair. We're probably still doing it now, I thought. If only it were so isolated. If only this now could stay. Tracy continued. I didn't cheat on you. I didn't cheat. She looked at me pleadingly. Please believe me. I didn't cheat. Then what happened? My wife pursed her lips in concern. I'd known her long enough to know what she was talking about. This was one of those, he's going to be very angry, but I might as well rip off the Band-Aid situations. Chad contacted me a few months ago. Said his company wanted to expand in this market. In our town, I mean. He needs someone to help with advertising and graphic design and things like that, and he thought of me. I live here and I know what the advertising market is like, who's on trend, and, you know. Tracy was a freelance graphic designer, and a highly sought-after one at that. This room, her home office, was our home office during the darkest days of the pandemic. Our marriage began shortly before the lockdown. We married in October 2019, 6 months before the world stopped. I knew exactly how talented and well-connected my wife was, and I was proud of it. I saw her skill and work ethic every day for nearly 3 years. Even after I stopped working at COVID, my bosses decided that the savings on rent, utilities, and other things more than made up for not being able to communicate face-to-face. Then the company got bought out, management changed, and suddenly everyone needed to go back to the office, even though the numbers showed that we were much more productive working remotely. Why didn't you tell me? She shrugged. Because he was just an acquaintance of mine. We dated for about a month. I didn't even think of him as an ex-boyfriend. I didn't. He was just a guy, a friend from the past that I added as a friend because we had a lot of mutual friends. And then he friended me, which was about a year ago. I didn't even talk to him until he jumped on me out of the blue. And you know how it is. I have meetings with clients all the time, sometimes 6 or 8 a month. It's just not. She sighed. That's all he was, a client. Tracy bit her lip again, trying to work up the courage to continue. I spoke without meaning to and sounded sharper than I should have. First. The expression on her face changed. Sadness and worry gave way to fear. Not fear of physical attack. I wasn't that kind of guy, and Tracy knew it. But fear of change, fear of loss. I'd always been a rock for her. Tracy could be flighty like any artistic type, and I supported and protected her throughout our 4 years of marriage and the 2 years we dated. In the dictionary, my picture was next to the word dependable. So to see her rock begin to crumble, to hear the rumble in his voice warning of an avalanche, the fear made sense. Tracy hesitantly replied, yes, at first. And, please, Bill, you have to believe me. I never wanted anything to happen. I mean, nothing happened. No, not really. It's the first time we've kissed since high school. But, she sighed. But I gave in to temptation, I won't lie. We sat looking at each other for a few moments before she looked away guiltily. Why? Why? You said it all started with business. Fine, it was an ex-boyfriend, albeit a minor one. You should have said something, but you didn't. I partly understand why, but I think you're being sly. If I had done the same thing, you would have been furious. Yes, but you... She sighed. You're not me. You're calm, pensive. I didn't think that. A self-deprecating chuckle escaped her lips. I didn't think so. Perhaps I can shorten the sentence. Agreed. Her eyes darted in my direction for a moment, but her head didn't waver. And then, when we met with him a few times, we became comfortable. He was a client who became a friend. Yes, we dated almost 10 years ago, but honestly, I didn't think of him as an ex-boyfriend. I mean, before you were with me, you were dating what was her name? Cindy, for 2 months? Do you consider her a girlfriend or just someone you dated? There was a sudden growl in my voice. Don't do that. What? Don't try to think about what would happen if... She turned her head in my direction, her eyes beginning to fill with panic. I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to make you realize what I'm thinking. I didn't want Tracy to get upset, partly because I wanted to deal with all of this in one fell swoop, and partly because as angry as I was, she didn't need another trauma on top of all the others. My tone softened, but there was still reproach in it. I consider her a close enough friend to tell you we're having lunch together, even if it's only on business. She nodded irritably. You're right. I should have done the same, but I didn't, and I'm sorry. My wife sighed, averting her gaze again. And then it got closer. Closer than it should have been. Never? Like I said, it was the first time he kissed me since high school. And the last time, too. I'm never going near him again. And I wasn't going to do anything. Then why were you wearing the same underwear? Tracy swallowed. Because it made me feel good in it. She closed her eyes. It wasn't for him. It was for me. I'm sorry about that. That's the truth. Since you're back at work, well, a half-sad smile flashed across her face as she looked at me again. You remember how it used to be when we both worked from home? I do. And even more than that. Two newlyweds stuck in the same house for 24 hours. One working as a freelancer and the other in an industry that expects results, but doesn't care about how to achieve them. Just to meet a deadline? We used to have fun. The week I found out I was going back to the office, she and I organized an event, trying to fit in all the time we knew we would miss. When I got back, I missed her, and she missed me. We texted for a while, and she would pounce on me as soon as I opened the door, but gradually things stabilized. I knew we both missed her, but I handled it just fine. She, on the other hand, apparently wasn't. She saw the smile on my face fade as the memories were replaced with realization. Her frown echoed mine as she continued. I know you hated going back to the office, but at least you had people to talk to. I had phone calls and a few lunch meetings, but mostly I just sat in my apartment trying to focus on work and not think about how much I wished you were here to set the table for me. Or, 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 or. Honestly, just have lunch with me. Or laugh at something funny on the internet. Or cuddle. I missed you so much. I've been lonely. And I know you were too, but you still had those stupid new bosses. You'd come home at night completely miserable because of them. And I was going to… what? Complain that I couldn't relax with you sometimes? Oh, woe is me. I can take a nap in the middle of the day if I need a break. What nonsense is that? I grumbled. Better than having an affair. I didn't have an affair with him. I barely kissed him. Hell, I didn't kiss him. He kissed me. I got lost in the moment, and then I pushed him away. We almost died, and he saved our lives, and he… She stopped, mouth ajar and frozen with the expression on her face from the realization that she absolutely shouldn't finish that sentence. That was fine. I could. Yes, he's a real man. I didn't say that. I didn't even think that, but he's big and strong and charming. And I've had the time of my life. She stopped again, horror creeping across her face as she realized what she'd done. Shit, I did it, didn't I? I had an affair. He seduced me and I let it happen. Damn it. Even if it was just emotion, it's… oh God, Bill, I'm so sorry. The love of my life held out her arms to me. I didn't recoil, but I didn't respond, at least not physically. My voice was empty. What would happen if you died, Tracy? If I shook my head. She didn't need to hear that right now. What? The tears that had disappeared returned to her eyes, making them glassy. They hadn't fallen yet, but they very easily could have. Just like she had. All they need is a push. We've come this far, I thought. We have to see this through to the end. I'll have to identify your body. I gasped at the thought, my voice trailing off now and then as I continued. I'd inquire as to why you were there. Would have taken your personal belongings. Would have seen that you were wearing the same underwear and realized what it means when you do that for me. Tracy's first tear fell in a big fat ball, leaving a glistening trail down her cheek. And then, when I looked in your phone, what would I find there, Tracy? What did I find when I took all the calls, texts, and emails from people trying to contact you in the last 24 hours? What did I see in your messages to him and your emails? She looked away, deep shame red on her face. I continued. Yes, yes, you know what's in there. And when I found out that you knew the guy you had lunch with, that you dated him, what would I think if you died? When I read how you were communicating with him, were they innocent texts, Tracy, flirting? Maybe escalating to more explicit ones? What would they look like to a grief-stricken husband? Would I think you'd been faithful to me? Maybe. Maybe. But would you have been faithful if you'd lived? I don't think so. Would you? She closed her eyes, and one shimmering track turned into many. No, no, Bill, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. I know, honey, I know. I stroked her arm and she let out a short sob. But if it hadn't happened, would you be sorry then? Or would you have regretted only after you'd gone too far? The short sob turned into a series of sobs as I pulled her to me. It hurts, Tracy. I know you're hurting right now, a lot more than I am, but it hurts me too. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I'll never be so stupid again. My wife's head rested against my shoulder, her body shaking as she tried to get the words out. I didn't say anything. I didn't feel like making promises I couldn't keep. Instead, I just hugged her tighter, felt her warmth against my body, and tried to remember the love I felt for her. This turned out to be not difficult. However, when I began to search for trust in her, it dried up. Yes, I could believe she was just stupid. I could believe that she would never do that again. But I was also sure that only chance and tragedy had prevented her emotional affair from escalating into a physical one. Maybe we would have survived, or maybe we wouldn't. I know she changed a lot in those few minutes when she almost died, and in the days that followed. But chance and tragedy didn't destroy us, nor did the fickle flavors of dopamine addiction to the internet. They took a marriage we both hoped to fix and tore it apart. For the rest of the day, we kept the computers and phones turned off. She finally realized why I had tried so hard to keep her away from them. The TV was set to Netflix or Hulu, and we watched silly comedies or romantic movies. No action movies, no horror, no drama. They were no longer as delightful as the day before. The food was from DoorDash, and we tipped the driver well for having to dodge news crews looking for us. The well-dressed buzzards got a stern "no comment" when they finally found our door. The next morning, she was making breakfast and I was making coffee. And then we discovered that while we may have been ready to move on with our lives, no one else was. I opened my laptop and discovered that this story didn't just get legs, it grew wings. A story with a completely deranged man had become a novel, with little resemblance to the truth. We disconnected from the world and reconnected to each other, but the internet never sleeps. In 48 hours, the story changed, and changed again. First came the traditional media. Local news outlets picked up the shooting story and fed it to the television networks. It should have died right then and there as just another minor tragedy, not worthy of thoughts and prayers or angry rhetoric. There wasn't much news that day, however, and local TV stations had already turned up the heat with footage of Chad kissing my wife. Not completely, of course. The versions posted on social media by the time the affiliate was able to find them were mostly cropped, with Chad and Tracy locked in a passionate embrace rather than her pushing him away. Within the first 24 hours, the phrase "Love Islands" had taken hold on the airwaves. People seized on the idea, the only point of hope in the midst of a senseless shooting, comparing it to a young couple who met shortly before the shooting at a Las Vegas concert. You know the picture. The man lying on top of the woman, covering her in the middle of the street. Hours later, people reached out to them, demanding that they date, get married, have children. Their story had a happy ending, but they were free and single. Tracy wasn't. Chad was a public figure, owner of a small but profitable company. I never saw him again, and I don't think Tracy did either, but he already had someone doing his PR. They jumped at the opportunity for free publicity. Within the first 36 hours of his appearance on Fox, he was presented as an American hero, a shining example, in their view, of the tough, no-holds-barred man who built this country. When asked about Tracy, he smirked and said, "A gentleman doesn't kiss and tell." God, what an absolute asshole. Nevertheless, the audience ate it up. This part of the narrative has been fixed from the beginning. Chad is the hero. Chad, the former NFL business owner who single-handedly stopped a madman by snatching his gun from him while others looked on in fear. His story had all the elements necessary to create a legend. In frontier times, he might have joined Johnny Appleseed and Paul Bunyan in the pantheon of folk heroes. But this is the 21st century, and apparently someone in one of the various vats decided it was time to revive early 2010s memes like Unlucky Brian, Scumbag Steve, and Too Tied Up Girl. Now, Chipotle Chad has joined their ranks. When memes about Chipotle Chad first appeared, they were aimed at the mythical tough guy image that Fox and its PR team came up with. The background image was taken from his Instagram. A Chad with perfect hair, two-day stubble, and a stoic expression, gazing into the distance from a mountaintop. The first jokes tended to repeat old Chuck Norris jokes from the 2000s. Apparently, someone really wanted to get nostalgic. Bastard even used some of them in his ad campaigns that year. The mainstream media picked up the story a day or two later. Either a political gaffe by a potential candidate pushed it off center stage, or a scandal between two celebrities I'd never heard of sent it into the orchestra pit. Tracy and I held our breath. We hid in our apartment for the better part of a week, hoping things would calm down. We both knew that the fame the internet wanted to give us was 99% a curse and 1% a blessing, and we hoped we could quietly disappear before that happened. Then someone really harassed Tracy. They found out where she worked and lived, as well as her friends, family, co-workers, email address, social media accounts, phone number, and of course her marital status. At this point, our lives started to turn to shit, even more so than the shooting itself or the revelation of my wife's emotional affair. Up until that point, no one could come up with a meme for Tracy. But once the professional trolls found out she was married, they came up with a great trend: two-faced Tracy. Like Chipotle Chad, the iconic image of two-faced Tracy also made its way to Instagram. In the image, she's sitting at a table looking rapturously at a handsome man sitting on one side of her, while I'm digging through my phone with a goofy look on the other. It didn't matter that the man in the picture was her gay cousin, whom she hadn't seen in 2 years, and that I was frantically trying to get news about my father, who had been in a car accident. The truth didn't matter. All that mattered was that viewers took the shot to mean that the woman was blatantly ignoring her husband while flirting with another man. 4 days after the 5:31 a.m. shoot, I was called an asshole on Twitter for the first time, but it was far from the last. I didn't know the man, at least not possibly. None of these platforms check who posts on them. XX_cuntsplitter. _XX didn't seem like someone I would willingly spend time with. He was just some weirdo wanting to pick on someone who was already having a bad time in life. The kind of low-level sociopath predicted in Gabriel's big internet theory for chumps. Normal person. Consequences plus audience =, complete idiot. With my baptism as Chuck the Asshole, the trifecta of new image macros was complete. Frankly, I'm grateful to those who chose to rhyme rather than use my real name. This meme didn't go viral as quickly as Chad and Tracy, but it had a certain longevity that neither of them had. I think the image of a droopy nerd in glasses ignoring his gorgeous wife in favor of his phone has created a certain itch among those who want to communicate using slogans pasted on stolen photos. Not 24 hours after the doxing, new memes about Chipotle Chad began to appear. One of them read, "Beats your wife, saves her life." Chad has a PR firm, however, and they turned that pile of straw covered in shit into even more gold. After all, what's more manly than a jock stealing a nerd's woman? Tracy became famous very quickly. She was a gorgeous woman, and you couldn't say that men didn't look at her wherever she went. I always thought I'd punched above my weight by getting her, and the internet happily confirmed that suspicion. Frustrated housewives and their successors, who made Twilight such a hit decades ago, were still lurking in the shadows, waiting for a new love triangle to distract them. Now they had a real one, at least in their imaginations, and a whole new section of the internet joined in to beat the crap out of our marriage. People were literally writing fanfics about us, for crying out loud. I think it's a sign of the times. Team Chad had many more fans than Team Bill. My wife was doing her best to allay my fears, but she was going to cheat on me. Our brief attempt to reunite was cut short by the time we spent hiding in our apartment, feverishly checking various screens and dreaming of becoming invisible. Now all my doubts and anxieties were amplified every time I looked online. We tried seeing a psychologist, but That too was jeopardized by our newfound fame. Tracy and I visited several therapists, but they decided that the attention we were attracting would interfere with their work. Eventually, we found one who agreed to see us, but oh my God, she seemed strangely hostile to me at the first session. Even Tracy noticed it. Not literally, but she was against me in almost everything. In the second session, she started emphasizing what I might have led Tracy astray in, and downplaying what she had done. Neither of us liked her doing that, and Tracy started fighting for me in protest. The evening after that session, I decided to check out this kind counselor's personal Facebook page. You've probably already guessed where it led. It turns out she was on Team Chad to the end and wanted to cut in on her favorite soap opera. Unprofessional? Unethical? Even immoral? Sure. But so what? We weren't real people, were we? We were just characters in her favorite drama. After that, we stopped asking outsiders for help. Tracy soon found her graphic design business flooded with new inquiries. Most of them came from scammers, but a few turned out to be legitimate. Internet fame can be a double-edged sword, but it can also be lucrative if you survive it. After a few weeks, she hired a virtual assistant to handle them. So yes, the internet thought my wife was a whore and she had to deal with more than one stalker, but she was definitely capitalizing on her notoriety. And me? Not so much. My return to work sucked. One or more of my coworkers taped my office with various memes. No one admitted to it, and my manager helped take them down, but there was a slight smirk on his face the whole time. New memes appeared daily and sometimes more frequently. If I left for lunch, memes. Needed to get my car serviced? More memes. Sick day? Oh, you better believe there were memes. I knew it wasn't the development staff doing it, or at least not my direct coworkers. Hell, some of them were taking pictures of salespeople, managers, admins, and other people posting memes in my cube. But that didn't matter. I tried contacting HR, claiming a hostile work environment, but I got no help. This didn't surprise me. Heck, one of the HR people had been photographed doing this activity. We lived in a work-for-hire state, and I worked for a shitty company. Without an attorney, I had no chance of getting them to change their point of view. And with an attorney, I would have been fired for some nonsensical reason, unrelated to the hostile work environment. I might have gotten compensation eventually, but it wouldn't have helped in the short term. Each day I returned home more and more discouraged. Tracy tried to help by trying to comfort me with words, displays of affection, and physical proximity. Unfortunately, after seeing her face on my desk every day with mocking comments printed on it, I couldn't help but feel warm feelings for her. It didn't help that her nightmares were getting worse as time went on. Yes, they were horrible for her, and I tried to be a loving and supportive husband, but it meant I got less sleep, which made the situation less bearable. The entire internet, with the exception of Team Chad and Team Bill's shippers, stopped caring so much in a matter of weeks, but our memes persisted. Yes, over time they'd become somewhat detached from their original context, but my wife was still literally the poster child for openly cheating wives, and I was still the poster child for oblivious, cuckolding husbands. I hated my job more than ever, but the search for a new one led to dead end after dead end. In the cases where I managed to get an interview, about half the time they just wanted a picture with Chuck the cuckolded cuckold, and the other half immediately stopped the process when they realized who I was. Everyone in the tech industry knew what kind of shit could happen if they hired me. Hell, most of us had engaged in this kind of trolling stupidity when we were younger. Our relationship was slowly crumbling before our eyes. My situation switched with my wife's, and I became an isolated person with few friends and no outlet. She had more things to do than she could handle, and this alleviated the loneliness that plagued her before, but at the same time further distanced us from each other. Even if it weren't for two events that led to the destruction of our marriage, I don't know how we would have managed to stay together. The first of which I probably could have foreseen. No, I know I could have. A group of guys from a neighboring school found out that Chuck-kun worked at a local office and found it extraordinarily amusing to hit on me as I walked in and out of the building. Never mind. I figured they'd eventually get sick of it. For 2 or 3 weeks, I just ignored their taunts as I walked from my car to the building. I knew what they were filming. I'd seen the videos on TikTok before. They weren't just doing it for views. Again, nothing special. But one day they started throwing not only insults, but rocks. I turned on them, roared with rage as blood flowed from the wound on my cheek. They ran away, I washed the cut, put a band-aid on it, and hoped that would be the end of it. I considered calling the police, but the development team had gone on break and I was too busy to bother. By lunchtime, I had become a trending topic on Twitter. Chakwad attacks people. By 3 p.m., I was in the office with my boss, his boss, and the HR rep. Long story short, they fired me. They told me we lived in such a state, I replied that I would sue them for creating a hostile work environment. We had another long altercation. Voices were raised, threats were made. Finally, after some quiet whispering on their part, they offered me 3 months severance pay, all my vacation and sick time, a letter of recommendation, and the right to unemployment benefits if I signed an NDA. I talked to my attorney and he advised me to sign the agreement and move on with my life. Moving on with my life would have been nice. It didn't happen, but it would have been nice. A new wave of ridicule and anger came at me from almost every direction. Fortunately, online outrage burns out quickly, and within a few days someone else was found to fill the role of the new face. Anyway, in their opinion, I had become the bad guy, but it was another source of irritation that I didn't need at all. The local job market certainly didn't get any better when I went from internet buffoon to raving lunatic. Yeah, the video eventually surfaced, but the police didn't want to press charges. Goddamn useless assholes. You'd think if we stayed home with Tracy, we'd have a chance to repair our relationship. You'd be wrong. The distance between us only widened when I got in the way. She didn't say it outright, but her feelings about it were obvious. It used to be fun for the two of us to sit around the apartment, but now it was distracting her when she was trying to mind her own business. Worse, I was spending my time in a perpetual bad mood, unable to find a job, and bored as hell. Tracy tried to sympathize, but as a freelancer, she had to act while it was hot. Never mind that she'd heated that iron red hot, nearly burning our marriage. From that point on, things went downhill. I grew increasingly resentful of her, not so much because of her success, but because it was mine. She became less and less responsive, and I became more and more depressed. I started working after hours to avoid her. She began to ridicule my sulking. Weeks of fighting and bickering led to the final act, and my God, it was amazing. That night, as we reached the point of no return, Tracy and I sat on the couch as far apart as we could get. She and I hadn't had anything going on in weeks, and we'd almost stopped feeling any real affection for each other. Half the time I slept on the couch because we were so tired of each other by then. We never said exactly what was bothering us. We managed to keep our relationship in check to avoid such frankness, but we both knew. She won the toss, and I found myself forced to watch some ridiculous Korean drama. I, on the other hand, was mostly staring into my phone, reading a book. We both looked up from our screens when someone knocked on our door. Shrugging, I stood up and opened it. Have you ever seen a SWAT team in person? Like a SWAT team with a whole butt? I wouldn't advise it, especially when you can see that some of them are frustrated that they can't point their guns at you. But I didn't pee my pants. Come over to me. What can I do for you? The older cop asked. Mr. Kowalski? Bill Kowalski? Yes? I didn't mean for it to sound like a question or a squeak, but you know how it is. Lots of cops with loaded rifles. He craned his neck and looked at Tracy as she came up behind him. Tracy Kowalski? Yes? We got a report of hostages being taken at this address. Are you okay, ma'am? Tracy gasped. What? No, we're fine. I'm fine. We were just watching TV. As it turned out, the SWAT team had, thankfully, exercised some restraint. They used a small, flexible fiber optic camera, slipped between the door and the jamb to check out the situation. Thank goodness we were watching TV in the living room, or they would have broken down the door and thrown flares at it, at least if the accounts of other people who were attacked are to be believed. That is, those who survived. Some dude I didn't know called 911, identified himself as a neighbor, and said I killed our non-existent children and was holding Tracy hostage. Why? Probably for fun. Or maybe because they wanted me dead. Several people retained a keen interest in the love triangle they'd constructed in their imaginations, and it was entirely possible that someone on Chad's team wanted me out of the way so he and Tracy could be together. I'd given up trying to understand the thought process of such people. Whatever the reason, the outcome would still please Chad's team. Tracy and I got on it almost as soon as the cops left. It was a wonder they didn't come back 15 minutes later to check on the yelling. I've had enough of this. I've had enough of this whole damn thing, Tracy moaned, sitting down on the couch and wrapping her arms around her head. Are you done? Are you done? I almost got shot. I know. I'm sorry. I rolled my eyes. Oh, well, it gets better then, doesn't it? I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. When is your I'm sorry going to turn into something that actually fixes this goddamn shit you've turned our lives into? Don't blame it on me. It's not me. Furious, I snapped back. You were going to have fun with another guy. Yeah, wrong time, wrong place, but you didn't have a single reason to be in that place. I almost died, I snorted. And that justifies everything leading up to that moment? That you almost died means I have to admit that you lied beforehand? That you met that asshole without telling me and fell for his bullshit? That I'm supposed to look past all that and everything that's happened since? For God's sake, Tracy, you did this to us. You did all of this to us. All I did was be a good husband, and all you did in return was ruin my life. And there it was, the phrase I never said. God, it felt so good to spit it out, like cauterizing a boil. Tracy narrowed her eyes angrily. Okay, Chuck. No, she didn't. Stunned, I spat out, what the hell did you just say? You heard me. You were sitting on the couch feeling sorry for yourself because you got fired, because the internet thinks you're an asshole, because… She made a sound of disgust. Whatever. Because my wife wanted to have fun with another man? That's why, Tracy. That's why they put that damn nickname on me. But at least yours, two-handed, is accurate. Her eyes blazed. I told you I've never been two-handed. Back off. It's just… My shoulders slumped. Just back off, Tracy. You did this to us. All of it. You were bored and lonely. You let yourself be seduced. You kissed Chad. God, Tracy, you almost died and I hate that, but now you almost killed me too. She opened her mouth to speak, but I ignored her attempt. Honestly, I'm serious. Screw you. To hell with all of this. I'm out of here. And what does that mean? For the first time since I'd been fired, I saw real remorse in her eyes. Remorse and fear, not of the man with the gun, but of what our lives had become. Fear of the next words that would come out of my mouth. I want a divorce. It was over except for the screaming, and there was a lot of screaming. By the end of the night, there were a lot of tears. We hugged each other as we fell asleep on the couch, and she was still begging me to change my mind. I didn't hate her. Hell, I loved her. That was the worst part. But I couldn't take it anymore. What she'd done to us, and what she'd done to me. Truth be told, none of what followed her stupidity was her fault. Not the memes, not the fact that crazy people mistook our lives for one of her romantic dramas, not the fact that the cops showed up at our door. None of it. She couldn't have foreseen any of it when she met her former high school boyfriend for lunch that day. But in the end, no snowflake is responsible for an avalanche. The next day, we broke the lease. It turned out that the complex would gladly waive the fee if the tenants who brought the damn SWAT team to their door would just quietly leave. We used the last week in the apartment to lay out our stuff and sign the appropriate forms. She tried to get me to stay using every tool at her disposal. None of them made me change my mind. When I turned her down on a what I want I take basis, she finally realized it was over. We left the keys at the rental office and went to our cars. Tracy looked at me with tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Bill. I know that. I know you're tired of hearing it, but it's the truth. I'm sorry for what I did. I love you. I silently said goodbye to my unwilling tormentor, kissing her on the forehead, then got in my car and drove until she was out of sight. It was almost 3 years before I saw Tracy again. But first, I heard her. I'd recognize that voice anywhere, especially when the woman it belonged to started to get angry. A woman beating up an airline representative definitely fit that definition. What do you mean, canceled? What about the next flight? The bemused employee tried to calm her down. I'm sorry, ma'am, but there was a mechanical problem on your flight and the next flight is full. We can put you on one. Looks like tomorrow afternoon. In the afternoon. That's just ridiculous. What about the morning flights? You say they're all full? Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry, but because of the pilot's strike and… I watched from a distance. I knew the voice, of course, but from behind, the woman wielding it like a baton seemed almost unfamiliar to me. Her height and build were appropriate. Perhaps she was a little heavier than the last time I'd seen her, but not by much. But my possible ex-wife, who was now turning away from the register in disgust, had shoulder-length black hair with bangs instead of long blonde hair, and contact lenses instead of glasses. And she was dressed not in the bohemian boutique yogini mom outfits that Tracy had worn almost constantly during our marriage, but in a sensible conservative business suit with a skirt. But no, this woman was Tracy, and she hadn't noticed me yet. Or maybe she had noticed me, but she just didn't recognize me. I had changed, too. I stepped out of the line we were both standing in and followed her feet as she staggered and ran across the terminal. When the woman stopped, I patted her on the shoulder. She turned around and almost shrieked, "What?" Then she saw me, really saw me. I thought she was going to cry when I smiled warmly and said, "Hi, Trace." Bill? William now. Because… I shrugged. Because… She nodded, still stunned. Still so gorgeous. Different, but gorgeous. "Liz, my name is Elizabeth now." I smiled again, trying to sound friendly. Despite what had happened, I still cared about her. A middle name. Good choice. Tracy reached out and stroked my face, then grinned. "You grew a beard? Where are your glasses?" "LASIK, and yes, the beard. I've always wanted to try them, but you never liked them." She laughed. "I still don't like them now, but…" Tracy, no, Liz, shook her head to one side and grinned. "But it's not as bad as I thought it would be." I joined in her laughter. High praise indeed. "What?" A man running past pushed me. We grabbed our bags and stepped aside. "What are you doing here?" "Trying to get home. The flight to Dallas was canceled, and they won't be arriving tomorrow afternoon. I've been living out of a suitcase for a week now, and I'm sick of it." She shook her head. "But I guess one more night in a hotel won't kill me. How about you?" Same thing. You live in Dallas now?" "Yeah." Her smile grew even brighter. "You too?" "For about 2 years. I just got back from a conference, and I'd like to get home soon too." "Well, that's not going to happen today." "No, I suppose." A quick glance at the clock showed 5:20. "You know, it's only a 4-hour drive. I can rent a car." I was suddenly seized with curiosity. What had happened to her? Why did she look like that? Was she happy? And how badly did I want to find out one way or another? The devil and the angel on my shoulder were arguing with each other. I don't know which one won, but if I had one, would you want… Yes. Her grin turned embarrassed. "I mean, yeah, that sounds good. My company can foot the bill." "Then we should probably hurry up. I can't imagine we'll be the only ones to think of it." Elizabeth and I almost jogged toward the car rental place, trying to find something decent-sized before it filled up. We settled on an SUV. More expensive than I would have chosen, but her corporate card paid for everything. Corporate card. I never thought I'd see her with a card like that. "All right, Nana, do you want to drive the first half of the trip or the second half?" she asked as we stowed our stuff in the trunk. "I'll take the first one, and you relax." Such a gentleman. Her sarcastic smile still had the same effect on me years later. Hell, I didn't realize how much I missed her. Doubts began to creep in about the sanity of it all, and she noticed the flutter on my face. "Hi, William. It's okay if you don't." I shook my head. No, I want to. I'd love to meet up. Come on, let's hit the road." We didn't talk much as we made our way through Houston's crazy rush hour traffic, mostly just phrases like, "Watch out," and "Damn idiot." You know, the usual Texas talk while driving. But here we were, driving out of the city and suburbs, putting the car on cruise control and heading north on I-45. I had only been able to absorb superficial information before, but now I had time for details. As the miles flew by in relative silence, I furtively glanced at my ex-wife. Liz dressed mostly conservatively, but I noticed small hints of Tracy in her. A couple of new ear piercings, hippie-style glasses, a choice of black hair color instead of a more muted one. But then I saw a detail I was completely unprepared for. A simple bracelet on the ring finger of her left hand. My heart sank a little. I felt foolish. Surely someone had grabbed her. I had given up all claim to her, and it didn't surprise me. I told myself I shouldn't fall into melancholy, but I did. "Penny for your thoughts?" She looked at me inquisitively. I was just trying to ignore how much it hurt to see you distant." You just look so different. Oh, yeah, Liz lowered her gaze in embarrassment, then twirled a strand of hair nervously. Such a familiar movement, but completely unconsidered. Echoes of memories flashed through my mind, flirting with a girl at the bar as I tried to get her phone number, unaware that she was feeling as excited as I was and her embarrassment growing with my shocked silence. My new fiancé asking hopefully if our finances could support an independent business. My frustrated ex realizing that the last straw had broken the camel's back. She smiled at me, eyes downcast with embarrassment. Everyone, well, they've changed since you left. Not all at once, but not for long. Maybe 6 months? The initial fame sort of faded away, and I'm left with Two-Faced Tracy, or her reputation anyway. New clients began to dry up. Old clients started arguing over their accounts, wondering if I was cheating them. Business, she sighed loudly. I gave it up. Oh shit, really? I'm so sorry. Liz shook her head. Went back to corporate America. That first job didn't last long. Tears covered her eyes as she looked me straight in the face. Will, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize how bad it could be. You told me, but I didn't realize how awful you were being to your shitty coworkers. I found a printed meme in my office minutes before I was ready to cry. Plus the whispers, the women in the office avoiding me, the assholes hitting on me, thinking I'm easy. She ran her sleeve over her face. I only ended up staying there for 4 months. Then I took a month off, got a makeover, and she waved a hand at herself. Elizabeth, the sullen corporate coward. She leaned over and muttered, Thank you. God, Will, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was such a bitch about everything, and no, I was, stop it. I took a deep breath, watching the flat, grassy landscape float by outside the window. Yeah, you could have been more understanding. I needed your support, but I don't know if I would have accepted it. I blamed you for everything back then. I deserved it. In part, yes, maybe even most of it, but not all of it. There were so many things that I swallowed and shook my head. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter now. My hand dropped as I remembered the tape that marked her as a stranger. Then I nodded in her direction. You're happy now, right? I'm moving on, and you're moving on. Liz furrowed her eyebrows, looking at me incomprehensibly. Then her mouth and eyes widened in surprise. What? No, Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her lower her gaze to her hands and remove her ring. No, I'm not married. I just wear it so I don't get hit on while traveling. Dating wasn't a priority. Oh. I couldn't think of anything else to add. My brain was busy running this new revelation through my head. Dating wasn't a priority. What does that mean? She muttered quietly. Are you telling me you've already stepped away from the business? Mentally bringing myself back to the here and now, I muttered, Yes, withdrawn. I frowned. After we broke up, I reinvented myself, I guess. Before everything happened, I was trying to find a new job, and after, well, I couldn't find anything. You know what happened there. Again, I'm sorry. I gestured with my hand to show her to stop apologizing. Things didn't go well for me on that front, but I talked to Ray, my former coworker, and he suggested I try freelancing for a while. Picked up short-term orders on Upwork, Fiverr, and similar sites. Sometimes I signed long-term contracts where I could work from home. Employers only see your full name on these sites after they hire you, and with a beard, no glasses, a different haircut, and my legal name instead of Bill, no one had any idea who I was. And if they did, at least they didn't say anything. I chuckled softly. Well, my old home exercises were no longer available, so I started going to the gym. At the gym, no one bothers you if you're just a guy trying to work out on his own. I got myself in shape that I know I would have missed out on. Hell, since I'd told her so much, I might as well get on with it. I feel better after all this. I know I'll never be as big and strong as Chad, but I also know I let myself get down, and I've always wondered if that was part of why. No, don't do that, William Kowalski. You were 10 times better than he was. You were a good and handsome man, and you loved me, and Liz was seething with resentment, directed obviously at herself. When I think about how I let myself be seduced, no, when I left myself open to seduction. That was my fault. He seduced me, yes, but I made myself vulnerable to him. You didn't do anything wrong. Nothing. Do you understand? I loved you, but I was too stupid to cherish it the way I should have. To cherish you the way I should have. She looked out the window. Such a damn idiot. I nodded to myself, then said quietly, "Thank you." Clearing my throat, I continued my story. But I found that I enjoyed it, just being able to relax and focus on weights or running. I started exercising for myself, not because of feelings of inadequacy or anything. Then my mom got sick and I moved back to Dallas to be near her. To prosper, actually. Liz turned to me with a bright smile. "Hey, I'm in Selena. Wait, your mom? Is she okay?" "Yeah, she's fine now. The cancer went into remission and hasn't come back since. But low cost of living, a little anonymity." I shrugged. I figured I might as well stay. "She had cancer? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I hadn't heard about it, or I would have." She frowned. "I guess I wouldn't have done anything. Who wants to hear about an ex-daughter-in-law who ruined their son's life?" I snorted. "Mom loved you. Hell, she still loves you now. I guarantee she'd want to hear it from you." "Really?" That fragile, hopeful tone in her voice hurt my heart. I realized what she was getting at. Isolation does that to you. Makes you crave any contact that seems safe. I'd suffered from it for quite some time and I hated to see her do the same. "Yes, really, A tiny beep and a new indicator light on the dashboard informed me that it was time to stop. Glancing at the horizon, I saw a convenient station at the next exit. "We need to get gas. Do you want a snack or something?" "I'll get them while you get gas. I need to go to the bathroom anyway." 10 minutes and a couple trips to the restroom later, we were back in the car. The gas station was conveniently located halfway down the road, so Liz took over driving duties while I dug through the plastic bag of her groceries. Water bottles for both of us, Chex Mix for her, as expected, and a moon pie for me. Glancing over, she saw me eyeing her warily and frowned. "Oh shit, I forgot you're eating healthier foods now. I'm sorry, it didn't even occur to me." The wrapper came off instantly and I made unintelligible noises as I ate the first bite. "Oh my God, I haven't had one of these in like 2 years." Liz grinned, feeling relieved. "They were always your favorite on road trips." "And they are now. I just haven't been taking many road trips lately. There's no particular reason. The best part is the company and, well, there's not a lot of company right now." She threw me an amazed, incredulous look. "Really? You're so damn handsome right now. I mean, you used to be like this before, but..." "Shit, I'm sorry. You know what I mean." "Smash the Hulk?" My ex had to stop laughing before answering, "Yeah, asshole. You should fight them off with a stick." I shrugged. I did for a while, but then it became such a hassle. Not fighting them off, but everything that happened afterward. "Oh, you're not on social media? Why? Or, wait, why do I know your name? And your face is so familiar." The ones who were excited about it really sucked. I could almost see them thinking, I wonder if he's still a sucker. "Tell me about it." I literally had one guy say to me, after I explained that I wasn't interested in him, "Hell, you and I both know you're a slut. Why are you pretending to be a slut?" "Asshole. Bitches." We drank and snacked in silence while she drove, and it went on like that for a long time until we were outside of Dallas. That's when Liz giggled softly. "What?" She looked at me and grinned. "I was just remembering our first trip when you wanted me to meet your family." I hesitated and blushed at the memory of the first time she had sassed me on the road. It made her laugh out loud. "I can see that you did too. It's a good memory." We both laughed, but the mood in the car became melancholy after that. "Yeah, it was a good time. We had a great time together." Elizabeth turned to face the road again, snorted, and simply replied, "Yeah." We fell silent again. I felt like I needed to say something. More than that, I felt she needed to hear something. "Liz?" "What?" "I'm sorry too." Her gaze darted to me, then back to the road. "God, for what?" "For not being stronger, I guess. For not being able to go through all of this with you. For better or worse, right? But I couldn't get through it, and I regret that." My ex-wife frowned, not looking at me. I cheated on you, or would have cheated on you, and I ended up being a real bitch. Yes, you were. When I didn't continue, Tracy looked over again and saw me smirk, then snorted. Asshole. Apology accepted. A pause. Really, I mean it. But you don't owe me that. I messed up our lives. I messed up my life. I messed up your life. I interrupted quietly. Saved the lives of 30 people. What? Not directly. I mean, you didn't want to do it, but you did. Just like you didn't want to turn our lives upside down, turn us into memes, or make SWAT teams show up in our living room, but you did it anyway. Will, just listen, okay? I sighed. It's been 3 years, Liz, and I've had a lot of time to think about it. A lot has happened since we broke up. All the things we talked about, freelancing, getting back into shape, changing my name and appearance, my mom's cancer, all of it. Some things we hadn't talked about either. And then one night, after a bad date with some dumb girl my friend was trying to set me up with, I needed something, some good reason to keep going. I inhaled deeply through my nose and exhaled slowly. So I sat down and wrote down everything that happened. Tried to make sense of it all, I guess. You know me. I'm not one to believe that everything happens for a reason, or at least not supernaturally. A follows B, and B follows C. But there's no causeless reason that makes them happen. Never. But when I started making my list, I noticed things that happened because of things you did. All the bad things, yes. But I also ran the videotape of the shooting through my head. Lunch break was in full swing, and the place was packed. Chad wouldn't have been there if you and he hadn't gotten close enough to have a friendly lunch. I can't imagine anyone in attendance being able to get to that asshole fast enough. And certainly no one could have snatched the gun out of his hands and beaten him to death with it. Elizabeth fell silent, barely breathing as I spoke. Her gaze was fixed on the road, but I knew her attention was on my voice as I continued. As I said, things don't happen by divine design. If it was, other people wouldn't be dead either. Hell, this guy probably would have gotten the help he needed before he got to this point if someone had been watching over us. But things happened the way they did, and because of that, dozens of people at least went home to their families that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And yes, Chad got his moment in the sun, but then all of that was ruined too. I chuckled, remembering the video of him being escorted out of his office. His PR team was top-notch, but his corporate lawyers? Not so much. A Mexican restaurant sent him a demand to stop using their name in their advertising, and he was told he could ignore it. That led to litigation, which led to discovery, which led to new revelations. A whole list of other crap that the great American manly hero hadn't bothered or didn't know how to purge from his cloud storage. Liz shuddered and nodded. Yeah, God, I can't believe it. She sighed. I can't believe how easily I was attracted to him. He's had a lot of practice with other women. Anyway, that's another plus. He didn't go any farther with you than he did with you. Regardless of you and me. Well, you've seen some things, I'm sure. I'm glad it didn't happen to you, but maybe it would have if you two hadn't been around that day. And he would have continued to get away with it, covered by his family's money and his fame. But everything that happened to you, yeah, it sucked. I'm not going to lie. But when you compare that to the lives of the people who survived, and the fact that there's a predator sitting in prison who otherwise would never have been put there, how selfish do you have to be to say, oh, I'm the only one who matters here, screw that? I nodded at the road. Don't miss your exit. She pulled into the intersection, and I paused to give her time to make sense of the ridiculous mess that is High Five. Once our rented Hulk shifted back and forth across the lanes and we pulled onto 635 and then onto the toll highway, I went back to my story. Even the scariest thing for me was, well, it didn't lead to wine and roses, but I quit that horrible job and started freelancing. I'm very happy with my job now, and I never would have done it if we hadn't broken up. I just wouldn't have been able to put my full-time job out there. Without that flexibility, I wouldn't have been able to come home and look after my mom. I wouldn't have gotten in shape, I wouldn't be doing, well, none of the things I do. And yes, it was lonely at times, but now I'm starting to make friends again. Real friends I can tell the whole story to. She smiled, a pained grimace that hinted at inner turmoil. That's good. I'm really happy for you. I watched her as she tried to keep her composure. I'm sorry if... I think maybe you're not doing so well. She shook her head, her voice broken. No, no, not really. I'm trying to find the positives in my life, but I'm failing miserably. You're probably right, though. Her smile grew a little bolder. All those people lived. Chad went to jail. And you're doing well. She nodded to herself. Yes, yes, you're right. The misfortune of one or even two people can't compare to that. It sucks, but it can't. I just want to... Damn it, Will. I just wish things were different. For all of this to be different. I'm glad you're looking at it with a positive outlook, but I'll never stop regretting what I did to you. Or for ruining our marriage, or for all of it. Maybe it's selfish, but I just feel so awful about what I did. By then, Liz had almost completely lost control of the timbre and tone of her voice, but I could hear the through note of self-loathing in all her words. Yes, she had failed. Despite what she'd done to me, to herself, and to our marriage, I didn't want this kind of pain for her. Even if I hadn't cared for her, and I did, she had spent 3 years being beaten both by complete strangers and her own guilt. She needed to hear the words. I forgive you. Her eyes darted to me. What? I forgive you, Tracy. Liz, I mean. Shit, I'm sorry, Whoa, that's enough. There's nothing wrong with Tracy. Tracy's always okay. She wheezed again. Are you serious? You forgive me? Yes, I forgive you. Liz stood in complete silence for almost a minute, then whispered, Thank you. I looked out the window but saw her reflection in the night twilight. My ex-wife twirled her hair again, that nervous gesture that had meant so much during our time together. I hoped it meant something specific now, but I couldn't be sure. The toll highway took us north of Dallas. We turned onto 380, then onto Preston and farther north. By then, the silence had become tense, but not awkward. I knew what I wanted to say. I think she did too. But neither of us wanted to speak first and make a mistake. However, we had less and less time left, so I broke the détente. Another good thing came out of this. Liz looked back at me, trying to hide an expression of hope. I like your hair. Very Wednesday Addams-esque. She giggled, wiping a tear from her eye so we could both pretend the laughter had gotten there. I wanted to imitate Jessica Jones, but okay. Oh, my bad. Fortune favors the bold, I thought. Do you want to grab coffee sometime? I'd like to socialize more. Yes, yes, I'd love to. Liz smiled broadly. The tension between us had subsided. Actually, I'd love to. Good, turn right here. A few turns brought us into a quiet neighborhood and to my house, a modest starter home. We exchanged license plates and agreed to meet later that week, whereupon I got out of the SUV and pulled my luggage out of the trunk. Liz smiled and waved at me as I opened the front door and stepped inside, and I returned the favor. However, something in the expression on her face made me hesitate before closing the door. I tossed my bags on the floor in the hallway and walked back to the car, peering out the driver's side window. Liz tried to push me away, but I saw the concerned look on her face and asked her to open the window. She nodded, trying to pull herself together as the window slowly rolled down, then tried to feign nonchalance. Did you forget something? Honestly? The crack in her mask widened. What's going on? Are you okay? I'm fine. A thin, maniacal laugh escaped her lips. I'm fine, just tired. You know, long drive and everything, and I just need to rest. Trace? Her lips quivered and her voice cracked. Please, I'm okay. Please, Bill. Hey, it's okay, you can tell me. I don't want you to go home if you're not okay. Liz clamped her lower lip with her teeth and her finger tangled in her hair again. I'm not okay. God, I'm such a mess. Why did I make such a mess of everything? I tried to calm her down, but she kept talking, mostly berating herself. Is this really the happiest 4 hours in a year? Maybe even more than that? And I can't even hold myself together long enough to drive home. I can't pretend that watching you walk through the door and wave goodbye hurts more than anything that's happened since I saw you leave the first time. I'm so damn afraid I'm going to ruin this tiny chance, and that's exactly what I'm doing right now. And you're going to see what a damn mess I am, and yet you're so well put together. How can you love me if I'm so... Her eyes widened as she realized what she'd said. Oh no, I didn't mean... I don't expect anything from you. I promise, Bill. But I can't help how I feel. I love you. I've missed you so much. And I know I'm acting like a weird little freak right now, and I'm sorry. God, I'm sorry again. Shit. Shit, I'm going to go. Liz, no, wait. What? I don't want you to go. Get out of the car, go inside, and have something to calm your nerves. Hell, you can stay the night if you need to. She shook her head. Bill, I can't. Please, please, if I go there. I've missed you too. You have no idea how much. Yes, I dated. And some of them were good, but they weren't you. Even the ones that were good and some that were even maybe great weren't you. I took my hand, which had gone from tangled to almost torn out, and squeezed it in mine. When I was listing all the good things that happened, I missed one thing. You didn't sleep with him. I don't think either of us could have found a way to go back to that. But you didn't, and I think we can. I took a deep breath. No, I know we can if we really try this time, so please, come inside and stay the night. Not in my bed, I'm not saying that, but just so I know you'll be safe. Her jaw dropped and she whispered, Oh, okay. A pause. Are you serious? What you said about missing me and trying to find a way back? Really? I nodded. I'll get your stuff. Go on inside. Make yourself at home. And she did. More than that, she made my house a home. A real home. Not right away, of course. 4 hours in a car is not enough time to bridge all the differences or make up for the difference in our lives. But it was a start. We didn't rush things. We went to counseling. We did everything we wanted to do when we were trying to rebuild our relationship the first time. It was so much easier when we weren't being attacked by random assholes. A few weeks later, we found ourselves in the same bed. And after another week, we finally got out of that bed for longer than it took to eat or shower. I lost my beard, she kept her hair. Every now and then someone recognizes us, but right now it's more a cause for amusement than another rock trying to crush us. Hell, we've even been spotted together on our honeymoon, and we've posed for the proverbial picture a few times, albeit with some variations. Sometimes Tracy was showered with attention while I looked at my phone, and other times a much more muscular Chuck was chatting up a gorgeous woman in a bikini while Tracy examined her nails. Yes, Know Your Meme still has our pages on it, but the internet has moved on. I don't know what exactly is in vogue right now. Tracy and I destroyed all of our social media accounts shortly before we broke up. I don't think either of us miss them. I certainly don't. Every once in a while I think about them and wonder if we could have stayed together somehow, but I don't see a way. Tracy and Bill just couldn't make a relationship work. Tracy realized how badly she had screwed up, but couldn't realize how much pain she had inadvertently caused until she felt it directly. A lot was going wrong in Bill's life even before the shooting, and he saw no way out. The added stress was too much. No, Tracy and Bill would never make it through, but Liz and Will, they're different people. Liz is more down-to-earth and sympathetic. Will is more psychologically stable and confident. I'm not trying to tempt fate, but I meant what I said. I'm sure we'll make it work. The baby bouncing in my lap and the baby growing in my loving wife's belly as I write these lines show how confident I am in that belief. I said at the beginning that my life would be so much easier if Tracy had died. That may be true, but easier and better are two different things. I can't imagine a better life than the one I have now, and I can't imagine better versions of the two of us. Sometimes better hurts, but in my case, I'll always prefer it to easier. First up in my afterword, a recommendation for a sequel. I've mentioned One Against before and how much I enjoy his work. For 2 years now, he's been posting complex, emotional, and suspenseful stories here, and almost all of them are linked together within the overall Wonderland universe. Wonderland is about to end, and consensual adults only is just beginning. Catch up, take your pick, look for something you'll love. There's a lot of great stuff here. In particular, I'd like to draw your attention to The Light Between the Trees, which is also about the aftermath of a shooting and a survivor trying to cope in the internet age. That story goes in a completely different direction and in much darker places than this one, and has earned a spot in the disagree-dislike category, so be warned. And to celebrate the end of the Wonderland series, he's hosting a Midnight at Lost and Found event this October. Expect a write-up on that book from me. The beta reading and proofreading of this book was done by Constories. They offered some great suggestions, as did One Against. Funny enough, the ones I took from One Against helped me feel some parts of the story more strongly, and the ones from Constories curbed some of my, excesses. I'm immensely grateful to both of them. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.